Hey guys, what's up? Force here from StarCraft 2 Strategy. Going to be looking at a Zerg strategy today. Now in this replay, our Zerg player is Damaga, and our Terran opponent is Select. Right into Damaga vision. Again, this will be a Zerg strategy, and what we're going to be looking at basically today, the general archetype of the build that we're looking at is just that basic Speedling Muta build, very strong against Terran players, can be very, very effective, and is used quite typically in most Zerg versus Terran games as the Zerg player. But specifically in this particular game, what we're going to be looking at is dealing with and being able to respond to a very early game Reaper harassment. Now, even with the recent patch changes of that increased build time on the Reapers, Reapers are still very, very, very dangerous as Zerg. That's something that you really have to worry about. Early Reapers can really mess up your day, especially if you don't know how to properly respond to them. So that's what we're going to try to take a look at here today. Obviously going to be moving out initially with our Overlord. In this particular map, you know exactly where your opponent is, so just send it on over to the base, see if you can get some scouting information, but at the same time, make sure you don't lose it to any Marines early in the game. Now, as you can see, we're droning up pretty hard here. Still 14 supply, and no buildings have gone down yet. You may be wondering about this. Essentially, on this map, what you can do most of the time, you can safely drone up a little bit harder and slightly delay your buildings so as to increase your economy. And this generally can be really good. It can be a very strong tactic. Getting that extra econ boost early in the game can be very helpful. As you can see, we're not dropping our spawning pool here until 16 supply. So our first spawning pool is not going to be coming down until 16 supply right there, immediately followed by the Extractor 15 supply. So as I said, in many cases this can be really great, not a problem at all, nothing you have to worry about, especially on a map like this where the run distance is so very long. You don't really have to worry about any early game pressure except from Reapers, and Reapers are what you have to fear on this map. And again, as Zerg in particular, you just have to worry about Reapers in general early game. And so it just so happens in this game, feeling safe in this large rush distance, we slightly delayed the buildings in order to get a better econ, going for that 16 spawning pool as opposed to that 14. The only real threat again is those Reapers, and what happens? We see Reapers. So at this point, your spawning pool isn't even up by the time the first Reaper's in your base. You're going to have to try to micro your drones. What you want to primarily do is try to get a surround on them. Don't just keep them mining and don't lose all your drones unnecessarily. You may say, well, I get those extra resources. It's not worth the resources currently to lose economy in the future. You much rather try to keep your units alive and try to get a surround if you can on the Reaper, or at the very least try to micro them around to buy time for your Zerglings. Now, even with your Zerglings out at this point, you're not going to be able to hold off the Reapers up until you get that Speedling upgrade. So you're going to want to start researching the Metabolic Boost as fast as possible. In this game, that went down at 19 supply. But again, as I said, even with that, it's not going to be enough. Now, we do have our first Queen out. We went for our first Queen at 17 supply. Just so you know, too, I'm going to mention these supplies for the build times, but realize that this early pressure, we're losing units, so the specific supplies isn't what you should be looking at in your game. What's more important is looking at how we're responding to this Reaper harassment. Now we're going to try to fend off these Reapers with a Queen. The problem is that the Reapers can easily, if micro properly, deal damage to the Queen without taking any hits from it. They basically just have to move in just to the max range of their attack and shoot and then pull back. So if done properly, they really aren't likely to take any damage. Again, and it's not going to be up until that Metabolic Boost research is finished that you're going to be able to fend off this attack. So basically what you're going to attempt to do is try to micro your Queen to try to push them away as much as possible. Expect to take damage and even expect to lose the Queen. With that said, we did start researching a second Queen. We started building a second Queen at 17 supply as well. Basically immediately after that first Queen finished building, because you're going to need it. You will lose this Queen, and you need to buy time until the Speedling research is upgraded. So as you can see, now that the Speedlings are in, we're going to be able to quite handily take out those Reapers. Basically trying to go on the low ground to any spots that they could jump, as well as having Speedlings on the high ground. With that speed upgrade, even with Metabolic Boost, you are able, even with the Nitro packs for the Reapers, with these Speedlings with Metabolic Boost, you are able to catch up to them. And that's, again, the only real way you're going to be able to effectively deal with this. So now at this point, we've fended off that early game Reaper attack. We can see in our opponent's base, we don't see much of a tech switch. Obviously, that's not going to be the case if they've dumped that many resources into early Reapers. A counterattack is in order if you can sneak in before this block off goes off, you're going to do very well. Now obviously here our Terran opponent Select did an excellent job of blocking off, so in the case of Damaga in this particular game, not going to be able to take him out early in the game, but that is the proper response. You know, you fend off that early pressure. He's dumped a lot of resources into it. Your response is going to be, once you have those Speedlings, to go for a counterattack. Now at this point, the next thing we're going to want to look to do, again, the general archetype or build that we were going for was that Speedling Muta. So we're going to be getting this Lair to get Mutalisk on the board, and a few things to note about that, and I'll go into that in a moment. That, you know, you have a lot of options, obviously. The other thing too that we're going to want to do is get this expansion quickly. You're not going to have to worry. Once you have Speedlings, and especially on this map in particular, there's not a lot of places for Reapers to go. Once you have Speedlings, you can pretty safely expand at that point. Reapers aren't going to be able to take this out as long as you have Speedlings available to defend against it. So yeah, because there aren't any ledges right here, you can safely expand on this map. Any map that has those ledges, you do have to worry a little bit more about the Reapers, but Speedlings still can catch up as long as you keep some Speedlings on the high and low ground to get us around on those Reapers as they try hopping up and down the cliffs. So like I said, at this point we're going to be getting our Lair, and we're going to be going for Spire to try to get some Mutalisks on the board. Obviously going to need the second Extractor as well, and then once we have this Hatchery up at our natural, going to be getting more Extractors there as well. Because Mutalisks are very gas intensive, you do need that extra gas. You really can't rely on just one Extractor. Not going to cut it when you're trying to produce Mutalisks. So again, we took a pretty good econ hit early in the game. Now at the same time, our Terran opponent sacrificed econ by spending so much on those Reapers, so you're not as far behind as you may think. Work on droning up. Feel pretty comfortable against those Reapers as long as you have a decent force of Speedlings. You don't have to worry too much about them. So you can feel pretty comfortable to drone up. Going for Mutalisks is going to be very good for a multitude of reasons. One of which, you know, if you go for Mutalisks and they still only have Reapers, you're going to win the game. Piece of cake, no problem. Doesn't take much thinking there to understand how Mutalisks are going to win against a Reaper-only army. Now, likely transitions for the Terran player are to, he's going to expect you to go Mutalisks at that point, so likely transitions for the Terran player are to either go for a bio build with heavy Marines to deal with the Mutalisks, or to tech up to a starport and to try to get Vikings on the board. Now, I'm going to tell you specifically, as a one-on-one comparison, unit to unit or group to group, Mutalisks do much better against a Viking heavy army than they do against a Marine heavy army. Now with that said, if your opponent instead, in this particular game, our Terran opponent is going to be going for that Viking heavy army. Now you can still safely produce Mutalisks with this in mind. Again, you're going to be a little more susceptible to Marine heavy army, but the good thing is that if they go for Marine heavy army, you can in turn properly respond by getting Banelings. Banelings are going to do very well against a Marine heavy army, and if they go for the Viking heavy army, like we're going to see in this particular game, you're in a much better position, because like I said earlier, unit to unit, basically control group to control group, Mutalisks do much better against Vikings than they do against Marines. And the reason for that being is that you can catch up to the Vikings. The Mutalisk is a faster unit than the Viking. You can basically run into them as a group and use the splash damage ability of that Mutalisk attack to do damage amongst all of the Vikings in the group, and it's going to be much more effective for you. You definitely don't want to try to kite them around. That's actually what the Viking is going to be trying to do to the Mutalisks. Your main goal is to basically jump right in their face and start doing damage, and we're going to see that shortly as well from Damaga. So as you can see here, Terran player getting a scan on our base. He knows what we're going for, but again, it's not a big deal. The two things, like I said earlier, that we have to worry about are that heavy Viking or that heavy Marine. And if you see the heavy Marine, then just go ahead and transition into Banelings. That's going to be a proper response for you. And at this point, again, just going to be working on our econ, pumping out drones. I'm also going to be getting some upgrades there with the Zerg Flyer Carpus level 1. That's going to basically bolster their effectiveness, their ability to stay in battle longer, because they can clearly take more damage with this upgrade. And like I said, we're just going to be massing up our economy, trying to recover from that early harass, as well as trying to get a pretty strong group of Mutalisks before we move out. Now, like I said, those two possibilities that you could be seeing, the Heavy Marine or the Heavy Viking, you're going to rely on your scouting information to be able to decide what you're facing against. Always in all games, try to scout as much as possible. Clearly, with these Vikings on the board, it puts you in a very, very difficult position. A Viking heavy army has no problem picking off your overlords if you try to run them around the map. So keep this in mind. It's going to be hard for you to get a scout with that. Your best bet would be to use the speed of an overseer to try to sneak into their base and drop a changeling. But here you can see this is exactly what I was talking about. You really need to get those mutalisks up in the face of those Vikings. Don't allow them to kite around like they're trying to do here. Just catch up to them, use that speed advantage, and try to get right into their face and use that splash damage from your mutalisks to take them out. If you do lose a particular engagement like here, we were at the disadvantage, pull what mutalisks back that you have, get some transfuses off with your queen, and then rally any additional mutalisks into the battle with you. Should do pretty well at that point. And here you go, you can see it again, pulling those mutalisks right up into the Vikings, using advantage of that, the glaive worm splash damage. Might as well take advantage of that to the best of your ability. Now at this point we were able to take out a majority of that Viking force, so we are going to push into his base at this point. You're going to see specifically what he has, any tech that he's going for. Clear dangers to look out for are masses of marines as well as turrets. If you see either of those, you want to pull your mutalisks back. The real advantage to mutalisks is their ability to harass because of their speed and the fact that they're air units. So any dangers to your mutalisks, pull them away from them and then just do damage elsewhere. Leave their base, come back and do damage in a different position. Now as you can see at this point, our Terran player did call a good game because he went for that Viking heavy army, and we did properly micro those mutalisks by pulling them right into the face of those Vikings, taking advantage of that splash damage. We were able to fend off the army that he had, and he's got nothing left essentially to deal with this threat. So yeah guys, we took a good look at how to properly respond to early Reaper harassment and then transition into mutalisks. And then I really wanted to go over the possibilities that you could see when you have mutalisks, either those Marines or those Vikings, and how to deal with both. With just the Vikings, it's going to be about microing your mutalisks and getting them in the face of the Vikings. And with those Marines, you're going to want to transition into some Speedling Baneling army as well to take them out. And that's how you can effectively deal with that. So we're going to go over that build order real quick here. Start off with that 16 pool. Again, keep in mind these build order times are very skewed because of the fact that we lost a lot of units to that early Reaper, but the general times is what you're going to be looking to do, or the order of what you're getting. Start off with that 16 pool and that 15 extractor. Again, because this was a larger map, we felt comfortable droning up a little bit more and slightly delaying that build time. At 19, we started researching our Metabolic Boost. Basically, as soon as you can, you want to get that Speedling upgrade. At 17, we got our first queen, and then we made our second queen at 17 as well. We had lost some units, but we made our second queen because with those early Reapers, you will lose that first queen if they can micro those Reapers properly, so you're going to want a second one as backup to hold them off up until the point that that Speedling upgrade has completed. 29 supply, basically after we fended off that early Reaper harassment with our Speedlings, we felt comfortable expanding on this map in particular because there aren't any real ledges around your expansion. You can do so pretty safely. Immediately after that, at 28 supply is when we got our Lair, because we do want to tech into mutalisks as quickly as possible. 35 supply getting our second extractor for that additional gas, and then at 39 supply we finally were able to get up our Spire, and at that point it's just figuring out what your opponent's doing to counter your mutalisk and responding accordingly. So yeah guys, once again, this has been for StarCraft 2 Strategy. If you guys like our videos and you like what we're doing here, please do go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Keep watching and keep owning, guys. Here's the ambush tactic I talked about earlier as well with these roaches. Burrowing them, waiting for the army to pass right over if he decides to push out, which he did, and basically just taking out his units free of charge. I'm not losing a lot in that engagement, and he lost quite a few stalkers right there, and then just pulling into his base, and at this point there's not much he's going to be able to do. Something really key that I want to note here is just the particular players in this matchup. Saki, ATN's Saki,